Dave Rutan, DNM. DNM, Dave Rutan.
Good morning, Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. Expertise in many fields, especially technical fields, is handed down generation to generation. Many surnames in the past have heralded this fact. People named Baker, people named Shoemaker. Well, my family name is no different. Our name comes from the line of picker. And not just any picker we're talking about nose picker. Now, with noses of this type, it pays to be very efficient and effective at picking your nose skill. As we say in our family, it's always been survival of the pickest. We trace our lineage all the way back to Tutankhamun, when there was actually appointed, our family, one of our biggest moments was our family was appointed the official royal nose picker of Tutankhamun. Now, you may laugh at this topic, but when you find out that the efficient removal of dried nasal mucus, or DNM, has very important health and cultural ramifications today. So, what is the big deal about this nose picking anyway? We produce about 1 quart of mucus every single day. You may wonder, what on earth could this look like? Well, this is 1 quart. Now, most of this is actually swallowed, which I guess explains where all those extra calories must come from. But, of course, some of this does end up in what I call the pick zone. Now, you really need to pick. And what about blowing your nose? And where and how do we pick if we actually do pick? Well, let's not live in denial. The average person picks 4 times a day. So you all are actually pros at this. Now, we pick because it is uncomfortable to have these DNM in your nose. We also pick because we don't want these DNM hanging out of our nose. It's not very attractive. Now, there are 2 schools of thought of DNM removal. The first is insertion of the finger, which is typically called rhinotelexis. And there's also another way, which is simply blowing your nose. Now, blowing your nose can put high pressures in your nasal passage, which could actually cause some damage as you're doing it. So be careful about the blowing. So, what I would recommend is to perform rhinotelexis. And you can surgically remove the more stubborn and very crusty sort of DNM that occurs in your nose from time to time. So let me share with you some tips today that my family line has learned and passed down generation to generation. Number 1, the most important thing is try to pick a secluded spot. As we know, it's never great to be caught picking, especially when you're mid-pick, especially when you're successfully picking. Now, I also recommend that if you're going to be doing this picking, you should keep your fingernails nicely trimmed. I was round off the edges, a little bit longer on the top for a little more distance. And make sure that you file your fingernails down, because we don't want to damage anything as you're doing your job. Now, hopefully you've planned ahead. Maybe you've had a successful pick and you've planned ahead to decide what you're going to do with your DNM as it comes out. Now, if you haven't, many people end up, especially when they're younger, they do the old finger roll for a little while. And then they do what I describe as called the flick. And the flick is rather funny because it's kind of like Charlie Brown and Lucy. You know, every day Charlie Brown thinks he's going to get up there and he's going to kick that football. But every time you try the flick, we always know what happens. It never works because the flick always ends up with the DNM getting stuck on the flicking finger. Flicking finger DNM. And the next thing we usually do with this DNM is we decide we can roll it up there and we're going to just put it in the garbage can. And we know it doesn't work either. It always sticks to either this finger or that finger. And Now you're stuck with D&M on your fingers, and the final solution, of course, we always go to is the handkerchief to remove the D&M. So my recommendation is to start with the tissue. Always have your tissue ready. Do not try to start your rhinotolexis without your tissue. Now, a good way to go about this is to actually drape the tissue over your picking finger. And this way, if you're caught mid-pick, then no one can really tell whether or not that's your finger inside your nose, but whether or not you just simply got the tissue up there somehow. When you're successful at your pick, then the D&M is safely concealed inside your tissue and can be easily removed at that point. Plus, it's good hygiene. You certainly don't want to walk around with D&M fingers if you were to go, and spreading that D&M all around. Now, also, to increase your nose-picking abilities, there's always the use of your thumb. Your thumb is doing nothing, so use the thumb on the outside of your nose to kind of help squish and position that D&M for effective removal. These are things my grandfather taught me. Maybe you've had trouble finding places to perform your rhinotolexis. I would recommend the car. Now, you might think, well, people see me in my car, but as long as you're 10 miles away from home, then it really doesn't matter so much. So, 10 miles away from home is the pick-free zone. You're free to pick all you want. I wouldn't recommend, however, a little bit of discretion. You could use what I call the thumb pick method, which, of course, using tissue, but I'll show you without the tissue, is using your fingers over your nose. Maybe you're scratching your eye here, and while your thumb is actually doing the work underneath your fingers. Or maybe something like this, where no one can really tell. Where's that thumb? I can't tell. The hands are So you go out of your car, and this is a fantastic place to take care of those D&M, which are in your nose. Are you out of tissue, maybe? You're stuck in traffic, and maybe you're a little hungry. Well, mucography, or eating the extracted D&M, is actually quite healthy for you. It's supposed to improve your what am I trying to say here? Your immune system. It helps your immune system out. And so if you're feeling a little bit of a cold, like mine right now, just take out, make sure you have your mucus there, and take a little swig. And the colds will go away. So remember, next time you have D&M stuck in your nose, realize that this means that your nose is acting properly, and if you're feeling a little bit ill, give yourself that D&M pill. Adam Toast question.
There will be silence until the ballots are